microphones.
Do you know we have the gospel ensemble here today leading the service? We're so fortunate to have that wonderful group led by Anderson Manuel and Brendan's accompaniment. And Jennifer's here. Jennifer's accompaniment. Hooray. So you may not know this, but our congregation is sometimes known as the Bucket Brigade. Some of you know that already because you've been a part of the Bucket Brigade. But those of you who do not know it may think I'm talking about some kind of volunteer firefighting squad. And that's not what I mean at all. Because when the weather turns colder, we partner with the Concord Council on Aging, and any Concord resident who is a senior can request a bucket of sand salt mixture to be delivered to their front door or another location of their choice. And believe me, they let us know exactly where they want us to put this very heavy, very large bucket filled with salt sand mixture, and that helps to protect them from the cold and icy walkways that sometimes we have around town, as you know, right? And don't worry if you haven't had a chance to be a part of the Bucket Brigade. Your opportunity is coming very soon. I will let you know how you can help be a part of it, because it is one of the simple ways that we make a difference in our community. I brought a different kind of bucket today. This bucket, we do not fill this bucket with salt and sand mixture. This is my sand bucket, and if it could talk, it could tell wonderful stories of times spent on the beach, by the seashore. And this got me to thinking about our congregation, because I don't usually bring this kind of bucket with me to First Parish in Concord. And I was thinking, if we all brought our buckets with us every Sunday and every time we connect online or any other time during the week when we're part of this community, I was thinking, would we bring our buckets empty to be filled up? Or would we have a full bucket that we brought with us here to pour out? And I know that when I leave here on Sunday, my bucket is often filled up with all kinds of things. It's filled up with connections to you. It's filled up with stories. It's filled up with inspiration. It's filled up with a sense of energy and hope. Sometimes laughter. So many things that fill up my bucket. But I wanted you to imagine with me for a moment, what is it that I also, and you also, bring with you to First Parish, if you were able to put it in a metaphorical bucket? I'll be really amused if you all start bringing plastic buckets. That would be kind of fun. But if you had a metaphorical bucket, what is it you bring to First Parish every time you come? Any ideas? What do you bring to this place? Gratitude. Music. Art, you can call it right out. Joy. Care. Curiosity. Sometimes people bring donuts, and I'm always grateful for donuts. Thank you so much for naming all of those wonderful things. And I think as Unitarian Universalists, we bring with us also our curious minds, our caring hearts, our hunger for justice, our desire to make the world a more caring, loving place, and also our need to be healed ourselves, those places where we've felt hurt and we need to find a sense of hope and a reminder of what matters most in life. We bring all of those things here. And we also bring in our buckets our personal gifts. We've already started naming those because somebody said music, and I know there's a lot of gifts of music over in that corner, and there's gifts of music in that corner, and all of you brought your gift of song with you today. I want you to think about what gifts that you have in your life. Some of you have gifts with numbers, and you volunteer here to do that. Some of you have gifts of leadership. I'm looking at our great standing committee chair, Liz Rust. Some of you have gifts of teaching, and you spend time with our religious education program. Together, each one of us brings so many gifts with us. My message today is actually inspired by a line of Christian scripture. I have to take off my glasses to read it, pardon me. The line is from 1 Peter 4:10. Serve one another with whatever gift each of you has received. We may not be able to carry our gifts in a bucket, but they're inside all of us, and all of those gifts are important. And being a part of this community inspires us to use our gifts and to make positive change. And for that, I am very grateful. Today, our religious exploration has already started. Our little owl group is meeting in the chapel, and they're learning about feelings and communication. Down in Little RE, they're playing together, which of course is very educational, but also is part of their friendship and belonging here in our community. Our 3rd through 5th grade class today is going to learn about the 4th UU principle. We search for what is true. And our Crossing Paths group is going to start our introduction to Judaism today. So I'm going to have our music leaders start our traveling song. And if you're headed out to the 3rd through 5th grade class or to the 6th, 7th, 8th grade class, please join us by this door.
Our reading is Invocation by Everett Hoagland. Architect of icebergs, rainbows, jeweler of crystals, sand grains, snowflakes, atoms. Mason, whose tools are glaciers, rain, rivers, ocean. Chemist, who made blood of seawater, bones of mineral in stone, milk of love. Whatever you are, I know this. Spinner, you are everywhere, in all the ever-changing above, whirling around us. Yes, in the loose strands, in the rough weave of the common cloth threaded with our DNA, on the hubbed, spoked, spinning wheel that is this world, solar system, galaxy, universe. Help us to see ourselves in all creation, and all creation in ourselves in one another. Remind those of us who like connections made with similes, metaphors, symbols, that all of us are, everything is, already connected. Remind us that as the oceans go, so go we. As the air goes, so go we. As other life forms on earth go, so go we. As our planet goes, so go we. Mysterious muse who inspired in the beginning was the word. Edit our thoughts so that our ethics are our politics, and our actions the afterlives of our words. Gospel choir.
And I've got a bell.
I've got a song to sing all over this land. It's the hammer of justice. It's the bell of freedom. It's the song about love between my brothers and my sisters all over this land. Ooh.
It's so great to have you here. Y'all always make me cry every single time. Thank you, Gospel Choir. Make a side note at the outset that this cough is definitely not COVID and not contagious, which seems warranted to say in these times. I have inflammatory bronchitis. It's just something my body does sometimes. On to better news. In the beginning, there was only the holy darkness, the Ein Sof, the source of life. Can you feel it? the holy darkness, and then in the course of history, at a moment in time, this world, the world of 1,000 things, emerged from the holy darkness as a great ray of light. And then there was an accident, and the vessels containing the light of the world, the wholeness of the world, broke. And the wholeness of the world, the light of the world, was scattered into 1,000 fragments of light. And they fell into all events and all people, where they remain deeply hidden until this very day. This story has been passed down through Jewish mystical communities from the 14th century. We're hearing it as told by Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. She continues, "Now, the whole human race is a response to this accident. We are here because we are born with the capacity to find the hidden light in all events and all people, to lift it up and make it visible once again, and thereby to restore the innate wholeness of the world. And this task is called tikkun olam in Hebrew, restoring the world. Tikkun olam is the restoration of the world, and this, of course, is a collective task. It involves all people who have ever been born, all people presently alive, all people yet to be born. We are all healers of the world. It's not about healing the world, though, by necessarily making a huge difference. It's about healing the world that touches you, the world that's right around you. Carrie Newcomer has a folk song where she's quoting someone, maybe Dr. Howard Thurman, about the power to touch the world that's just within 3 feet or so right around you, and how we can make a difference in that little space. Back to Rachel Naomi Remen, who elaborates, people will say about a story like the story of Tikkun Olam, well, how can I make a difference when I am so wounded myself? How can I make a difference when I feel so not enough? But it's our very wounds that enable us to make a difference. We are the right people, just as we are. For example, my own wounds, my own sufferings have enabled me to feel compassion for the sufferings of others. Without my suffering, I wouldn't understand the suffering of others or be able to connect to them. Remen concludes, my loneliness enables me to recognize the loneliness in other people, even when it is covered over, to find them where they have been lost in the dark and sit with them, and to know that just by sitting with them, eventually they will find what they need in order to move forward. I hope you take 2 things from this story. First, that there is a place for you here. And second, that we need you. There is a place for you here in our world, here in our shared community, here in our congregation. You do not have to be any different than you are in order to be worthy of care and community. I know that our congregation's culture can have a strong vein of perfectionism, and that can sometimes make it hard to believe that you are worthy or welcome just as you are. And yet, I have noticed that culture shifting. We are growing more and more into a place of care and welcome and belonging. And so I believe, and I offer you, that there is a place for you here. There's a place for you here, and we need you. We need you in our world, in the interdependent web of our shared humanity, and in our First Parish community. What you have in your bucket is different from what I have in mine. The inner light of your needs and your gifts and your strengths are uniquely yours. And the task of Tikkun Olam involves us all. As Reverend Ninan Soto says, all of us need all of us to make it. We must live and work together for the sake of healing and liberation. What is it that keeps us from acting on this knowledge? What keeps us from saying yes to the call to help heal our world? Rachel Naomi Remen offers that sense of, it's too big and I can't make a difference. And we remember that who we are is enough and that we only need make a difference in the world which is proximal to us. So what else? Too often, fear holds us back. When we think about taking a risk or making a change, we fear often the loss of the familiar. Taking a new action is risky. I know this well. During my chaplaincy training, my cohort supervisor and I decided to set goals for the semester. My goal was to try out a new thing every day. We even had a calendar where we would check off whether we had done the thing for the day. Left to my own devices, I tend to be pretty cautious. I find it easier to follow my routines and live in the known world than to experiment with new ways of being. But it was keeping me from growing my spiritual care skills. So I set that goal of trying something new each day. I wanted to say yes to some challenge every time I was at the hospital. Here's how it went. Some days it felt like a really big deal, and some days it was just something small. Either way, I would be contemplating an action or some words and feel my stomach start to clench. Feel myself contract. That was the signal, how I knew that whatever I was considering felt risky. It was my body's way of telling me no. It kept me safe, but it also kept me small, and I discovered that often it was more out of habit than a conscious choice or what I really wanted to do. It kept me from really showing up and from bringing my whole self to my work. And I wanted to bring my whole self to my work. So I would notice this clenching, and I would remember my goal of trying new things. It was scary. Each and every time it was scary. That's what made it a challenge. What would happen if my risk didn't pay off? What if I spoke up in that meeting and was met with silence or ridicule? What if I told my colleague how I felt about our relationship only for them to reject me? It took real courage to say yes and try out new things. But here's the great part. It got easier. I was doing this every day, and with repetition, actions that had felt hard at first, with time became routine. The stakes felt lower. And the practice of saying yes and trying out new things, that actual practice itself became easier with time too. It turns out that saying a courageous yes is a habit that we can build. Here's another great part. It was worth it. Things didn't always go as I'd hoped, but the reward outweighed the disappointment. Nearly always, my courageous yes paid off. When I spoke up, others usually appreciated what I had to say, or at least we were in better dialogue. When I offered more of myself to my colleagues, they in turn shared more of their stories with me, and we developed a deeper bond. When I showed up more fully, I felt more fully alive, more free in my body and spirit, and more connected to the people around me. Fear can keep us from saying yes in so many ways. It can keep us from trying new things, from reaching out to those around us, from acting on behalf of the greater good. When we find our courageous yes, there is potential for good things to happen. We live in a culture with a scarcity mindset. What if, instead, we were to cultivate a culture of abundance? There is enough to go around. We do have within us and between us everything we need to cultivate healing, justice, and liberation. Here's a story of how that can work on a larger scale. In the wake of the 2008 big banks crash and financial crisis, many countries responded with austerity measures. Our governments adopted a scarcity mindset, cutting public services from healthcare and pensions to arts and education. Many public goods were also privatized as a way to quickly raise money. This did not go well. An IMF study found that every dollar cut, rather than producing growth or even keeping things steady, ended up with economic output being reduced by $1.50. 50% worse than the cut that was made. Worse, a British study found that 100 deaths every day could be attributed to the cuts. One country serves as a contrasting model. In Portugal, people got fed up with the downward spiral. In 2015, they banded together to reverse the austerity measures that they had been living with. Newly elected government officials reinvested in the public sector, raised the minimum wage, restored pension payments, and more. The strategy is working well. In just a couple of years, Portugal's economy was growing faster than it had in a decade. Wages rose, unemployment fell, and many communities that were struggling have stabilized. Moreover, people feel better about their country and more hopeful about the future. Life isn't perfect. Portugal's strategy has not solved all of its problems, but the shift away from a scarcity mindset towards care for its own people and towards a culture of abundance is important. It took everyone banding together to say a courageous yes to each other. What would it look like if we said a courageous yes to each other? Coming off of this financial example, I think of our Close the Gap campaign. We're facing a deficit here at church this year. What if we were to abundantly fund our budget, both now and in the future, so that we could sustain the level of programs, staffing, and beautiful space that will help us feel hopeful about our community's future. More broadly, what does it mean to fully live into this interim time together? What will we learn in looking at our history and our current community that can help us shape the future? At church and in your own life, I wonder, what is in your bucket? What inner light do you bring to the collective effort of healing our world? Remember that your inner light includes both your strength and your need. Your wholeness includes your brokenness. There is a place for you here in our church and here in our world, and we need you. Tikkun Olam is the task of all people who have ever been born, all people who are alive now, and all people who will ever live. All of us need all of us to make it. Friends, when we feel our stomachs clench in fear, may we summon our courage and take action anyway. May we find our courageous yes. Let us rise above the idea of scarcity and doubt to cultivate a culture of abundance and hope. May we always use our gifts to help heal our world, building our connections in community, justice, and liberation. Amen, and blessed be.
Peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with the Spirit to guide us. Brothers all are we. Let me walk with my brother in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with the Spirit to guide us. We our family. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternal.